Hey everyone, so in today's video we are back with another save or splurge video. If you guys are not familiar with these videos here on my channel, they are essentially my answer to the typical dupes video. I like to do them this style because though I absolutely love saving money, as we all do, sometimes I think it's worth it to spend a little bit extra for a better formula. So that is what these videos are all about. Breaking down the formulas and then hopefully giving you guys enough information so that you can ultimately find out the best product for you. And in today's video, we are going to be specifically talking about eyeshadow. I thought it would be fun to do kind of a category for this Save or Splurge video. So let's first start off with this duo right here. Let's talk about these Maybelline shadow blocks. Here's the one that I have. It is in the shade North 3rd in Bedford. So I was really interested in these the minute that I saw them release because they looked very close to the Kaja Bentos, which we'll talk about in a second. Essentially, it really is an all-inclusive look right in a little trio that is pretty compact, and I think that that is really nice for travel, and it's also really easy for beginners. Having 3 colors that you know are going to work really well together, quad or a trio, is really nice for that. These retail for around $10 depending on where you get them, and you get 0.08 ounces of product, which is not a lot, guys, not much. So within this trio specifically, you have a matte on the top, you have your golden shimmer in the middle, and then you have a darker matte on the bottom. Now, my first impressions of these were not great upon swatching, but I will say that that does not always, give you the full story the way a product swatches. You really have to see it on the eyes, and I have learned this time and time again that a swatch can look really good and then on the eyes it doesn't do much. So let's talk about how these actually apply onto the eyes. I gotta tell you that this matte up top, it does the job, but it is not doing much. It will set a little bit of your concealer, but that is about it. It has a little bit of color, but in general, I just find it to be a bit chalky. However, this matte on the bottom, this darker brown, I think is actually pretty decent. It definitely gives me some definition and some pigment, and in general, I was pretty pleased with it. But this middle shimmer is just a bit dull. It's way more of a satin metallic than a true metallic. The whole look altogether, it doesn't look bad. I just think that there are so many other eyeshadow formulas now, even at an affordable price, that I think will get you a better look. Affordable brands have really stepped it up as far as eyeshadow quality, and I feel like this quality has not moved forward. It definitely feels a bit old and a little bit outdated, a bit chalky and just a touch lackluster. So you might be able to see where I'm going with this, but let's talk about the Kaja Beauty Bentos. I always want to say bento box, but they're the Beauty Bentos. In specific, the demo that I'm going to show you is of Chocolate Dahlia, and Chocolate Dahlia is the trio that is on my eyes today. They retail for $26, and you get 0.9 ounces of product. There are seriously so many different options here as far as the Kaja Beauty Bentos. You can get something like Chocolate Dahlia that does have a shimmer, a transition shade, and then a definition shade. And this to me is one of the best bentos as far as a full kind of look. But there are other options. For example, one that I've had for a long time is Orange Blossom, and this is just a shimmer trio. So this can really be added into, for example, a travel makeup bag, and you could get so many different looks just with these 3 shimmers to kind of amplify any of your other eyeshadows. And this bottom shade is pretty iconic. It's one of my favorite eyeshadows that I own. And then something like Neutral Moment is just completely all mattes. So as far as the Kaja Beauty Bentos, there is a lot of variety, and they have really flushed out this line of eyeshadows. But talking specifically about swatches and getting back to the idea of, swatches don't really tell the whole story, Orange Blossom from Kaja, all 3 of these swatch incredible, and they look absolutely incredible on the eyes. But if you swatch out Chocolate Dahlia, to me it just looks fine, but things really change when you go onto the eyes. So both mattes in this trio are not super intense pigmentation. It's way more K-beauty influenced, which I believe most of Kaja Beauty is manufactured in Korea. The mattes are really blendable and even, but they're not that super saturated pigment that I think a lot of us are used to. But I think that makes for just a really easy blend. And even with this look, I still got a really great defined eye. That's just something to keep in mind in case, you know, you have a different preference. And this shimmer right on top, I gotta tell you, on the finger and even just swatched out on my hand, it looks pretty, but again, I have a certain standard, this being a $26 trio. And on the eyes, I think, is where it really comes alive. This whole eye look is so subtle, but really pretty. And that to me is the whole vibe of Kaja. And it's great for someone that wants to know that their look is going to look good every time. So save or splurge, I think for a little bit extra money, the Kaja is definitely worth the splurge. And unfortunately, the Maybelline shadow blocks are just not it. Let's talk about a newer release from Rose Inc. This is the Satin and Shimmer Duet Powder and Cream Eyeshadow. And I personally got mine in the Satin Olive and Khaki Shimmer Duo. This duo. I was completely enamored by this color story. I am a huge fan of green tones, and I definitely have quite the collection of green makeup as of late. I would love to do a video about some of the green eyeshadows I have, but it retails for 30 bucks and you get 0.5 ounces. I was, again, very excited for this launch from Rose Inc. just because I am such a fan of cream eyeshadows. So over here on the right, you get the base shadow, which is, you know, this really, really beautiful evergreen, and then a beautiful golden shimmer to put right on top. The compact feels really nice. You have a nice mirror in here. All in all, everything leading up to application going well, but unfortunately something that I immediately noticed when I opened up my package was that this cream eyeshadow is quite stiff. It really doesn't have much of an emollience to it whatsoever. I would call it a cream to powder, and even that I feel like is kind of giving it a little bit too much credit. Even if a texture isn't exactly what I'm expecting, if it goes onto the eyes and looks really beautiful and reflective, then I am all there. But this powder shadow is so flat on the eyes, and it actually somehow just exaggerates the lids and how thin they are. You know, the skin around the eyes is very thin, and something that I immediately gravitated towards eyeshadow that is cream-based for is that it typically is more forgiving on the thin skin around the eyes. And that is something that I'm really cognizant of, how textures look on the skin. And this texture looks very textured on the skin. It just is very flat. And if I want an all matte look, then yeah, I'm going for an all matte look. But this satin is so flat that I don't feel compelled to really use it. And then the shimmer that is supposed to go on top is pretty in theory. I love the color story, and in general, I love the color story of all of the duos that Rose Inc. released. Even when you put the shimmer on top, it honestly feels similar to like the Maybelline shadow blocks. It's just a little bit of a flat look, and in general, it's just not one that I would ever reach for. I would be very disappointed if I had to use this for, you know, a night out. Unfortunately, this one just really didn't work for me, and I think it sucks because, again, the colors are so pretty. I wanted to talk about the Sephora collection colorful eyeshadows. In specific, I'm talking about these two just because they're a similar color story to the Rose Inc. Something that I realized when I was feeling that texture of the green shadow within the Rose Inc. It reminded me of a not as well executed version of the of the Sephora collection eyeshadows. So let's take a step back for a second. They retail for $9. Within each, you get 0.042 ounces. Though I will say that you can typically get them on sale. Now, this shade that I have here is the shade Pyramid, and it is more of a bronze shade, but you can see it has a bit of a green, a mossiness to it. And the formula, again, is a bit stiffer, but it has a luxurious creaminess to it that makes it kind of this hybrid formula that I think Rose Inc was trying to accomplish. If you told me that this was a cream eyeshadow, I would definitely say, yeah, it feels creamy in the finger, and then it kind of sets down to more of a powder. Nothing wrong with that. And I think that as far as longevity is concerned, a shadow like this that does set down on the eyes is something that a lot of us are open to. And who doesn't want a shadow that lasts a little bit longer? These apply with more pigmentation, and in general, they just look a little bit creamier on the eyes and more forgiving. A shade that I would put on top would be First Light. This is very similar to the shimmer shade over here. It has a little bit more base pigment, but just applying these two together, you're left with way more shine and overall a look that I feel is just more flattering. Obviously, you guys can see what I'm talking about in the actual demos on my eyes, but even just on my hand, do you see how this just has way more reflection, emollients? And then over here, the Rose Inc is just a bit flat. I almost get the feeling that Rose Inc was trying to accomplish something similar to, like, you know, a Tom Ford eye duo, having a cream shadow and then a shimmer to put right on top. But I have to wonder if this is what they really had in mind. I hate to come off as harsh, but this was just incredibly disappointing. So Save or Splurge, if you're interested in more of a creamy powder texture with some other shimmery options to layer on top, these ones from Sephora collection are more affordable, and there are a lot of different formulas within the line. So if you're interested in something a little bit creamier, Pyramid is a great shade to check out, To the Moon and Back, as well as Shock Chalk. That's one of my favorites. But if you want something that's a little bit thinner as more of like a topper, First Light is a great option. Demanding and Fantasia. I'd say get creative and see what you can come up with. And let's say you are willing to splurge. I have two green palettes here that I just want to throw out. This isn't going to be like a full-on in-depth review of either of these, but the Rebel palette from Charlotte Tilbury is a very similar color story to the Rose Inc duo, as well as the new Khaki Neutrals palette from Dior. I much prefer both of these palettes to the Rowan duo. So lots of options for you guys. Shall we talk about a little bit of glitter? Because I absolutely love glitter. So let's talk about these e.l.f. liquid glitter shadows. This is the shade Disco Queen. You get 0.1 ounces of product, and they retail for $6. So Disco Queen in particular is a great shade as a topper to a look. So it's really not going to give you a ton of base pigment. So just keep that in mind. It's more of that elegant kind of tap, tap, tap sparkle on the lids in addition to other shades. But there are definitely other shades within the e.l.f. liquid glitters that will give you that impact. So it comes with this little paddle applicator, and I personally find using the applicator to really kind of finesse the glitters will give you the best appearance. And it will kind of just leave behind those really nice kind of touches of sparkle. When you just want to amp up the look a little bit, I think it's a great option, especially because these aren't just purely white glitters. There are a lot of different colors within Disco Queen. I see little flecks of blue, just a touch of gold, little touches of pink as well. But overall, it's a really nice kind of icy glitter. And I am definitely a fan, and I love having this on hand to just add that little bit of impact. And at $6, I think it's one of the best liquid glitters that you can get at an affordable price, hands down. And I'm very, very picky with liquid glitters. But let's talk about the Glitter and Glow from Stila, specifically in the shade Perlina. These retail for $24 and you get 0.15 ounces of product. Now, this shade Perlina in specific is very, very similar to Disco Queen. I would say that the only difference between the two shades is that Perlina has a touch more white base pigment to it. It just has a touch more intensity. And as far as application, what that ends up creating is that Perlina as a standalone product works a little bit better. It's a little bit smoother, and because it does have a touch more of that white base, it's just a better standalone kind of product. I really like it to kind of flush out all over the lids, and I find that it's easier to get a very kind of smooth look. But on the other hand, the upside of using something like Disco Queen from e.l.f. is that you just get a little bit more impact. The sparkles are a little bit bigger, and you can really build it up on top of other shadows. Save or splurge is really going to depend on what you're looking for. I personally love both of these products. The shades are incredibly similar, so if you just want to play around with this kind of sparkly shade, I think it's worth looking into the e.l.f. liquid glitters really as a whole. But if you do want kind of a standalone shadow that is a little bit smoother as far as glitters, I think that the Stila is something that you might look into. And in general, I gotta be honest here, the glistening glows from Stila, the glittering glows from Stila, I really, really love them. And I think that they are worth the splurge personally, but I also love the ones from e.l.f. So I couldn't make this one easy for you guys. Shade-wise, they're very similar, slightly different formulas. Each are better for different things, so hopefully that ends up being helpful. And lastly, let's talk about these Cosmetics eyeshadows. So these are the Cosmic Pearl Dewy eyeshadows. I have 3 shades. I used to have all of them, but I did declutter a few and just kept the shades that I was interested in. They retail for $26, and you get 0.10 ounces of product in here. So when I initially tried these eyeshadows from Cosmetics, I was really blown away because I had not used another texture quite like these. These have intense pigment for a cream eyeshadow, and they're still very thin, incredibly metallic, and incredibly pigmented. As a whole, there's a lot of pigment in here and a lot of shimmer in general. See, that is just like one finger into the pan, and I have complete saturation of 1/4 of my hand. I think that these are really nice as far as application as well. Go in with a light hand, go in with just, you know, a soft finger touch to the pan, and you're going to get a nice look. Something though that was a complaint of mine when these released is that I just feel like the shades themselves are a bit on the nose. There's really not a ton of dimension to them. They feel a little bit cookie cutter and shades that are just a little bit uninspired, at least in my taste of eyeshadow colors. Something, for example, that I really love about, you know, Disco Queen and Perlina from Stila is that you have so many layers of dimension within one shade. Whereas when you get a shade like Star Child here, you know, that is one shade. You're not going to get anything out of it other than this one shade. Really, like, look, when I move my hand, it does not give you anything else, which I feel makes it just a little bit less attractive in general. And I also have heard some complaints about the wear time. And I think as you continue to wear the Cosmetics eyeshadows, they will kind of break up a little bit in the crease. But then I tried out a new shadow this summer, and I was kind of reminded of the Cosmetics shadows, so I wanted to bring this up. These are the Moira Lucent Cream Shadows. Moira is an indie brand, and they are more affordable. They retail for $7.50 a pop, and you get 0.074 ounces. I gotta be honest here, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I feel like the Moira shadows are way more inspired. The formula is very similar to the Cosmetics shadows, but they're even creamier, and the pigment I feel is smoother. For example, this is the shade Jupiter. Look at how multi-dimensional and beautiful that shade is. This is absolutely my favorite out of the shades that I have. It has way more of a uniform kind of look on the skin. It's just not a one-dimensional shade. So again, let me give you an example here. Jupiter versus Star Child from Cosmetics. For me, you know, my preferences, I'm way more likely to reach for something like this rather than a shade like this that just feels very one note. I guess that's just my preference with metallics, that I want a little bit of extra dimension to them. Again, the texture of the Moira shadows, they're just a bit creamier and they just feel a little bit more forgiving. Because there is so much pigment to the M Cosmetics shadows, they kind of layer up really intensely and easily, and you can go overboard with them a little bit faster. Whereas with these Moira shadows, I feel like it's a lot more difficult to go overboard with them. This is the shade Saturn, and I mean, look at that. Beautiful multi-dimensional eyeshadows. I would say personally, if you're interested in shades like this, a formula that is very unique, kind of that putty cream texture, these ones from Moira are very underrated, and I think that the ones from M Cosmetics, just for me, missed the mark. So yeah, you guys, I hope that this video was helpful for you. There are certain products in here that I am down to splurge on, and others I would just personally go ahead and save my money, because there are some absolutely beautiful, beautiful, affordable products out there. Now, if you really love cream eyeshadows, I do have an episode of Buy This, Not That, completely on cream eyeshadow. So if you're interested, I will have that over here. But thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next one.